Hey, welcome to New Hope Missionary Baptist Church's online Bible study on this weekday. It is entitled The Word for Today. And thank you so much for joining us during your lunch break or just whatever you're doing. Maybe you're at home, maybe you're at work, and maybe even be out on the road. But wherever you are, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to join with us as we take a deeper dive into the Word of God. You know, since this new year, well, before that, we started this new forum called the Word for the Day, which is midweek uh, Bible study for us on Wednesday, where we get to look at the Word and not just go over briefly, but we get to look at it deep in its context. We take a deeper dive into the word. We look at phraseology. We look at word by word, line by line. So we hope that you've been enjoying this. And if you're new to our broadcast, we'd like to thank you for joining us. And we hope that we can take the place of helping you to grow deeper and stronger in the Word of God. So without any further ado, we're going to get started with our preview video. And this will give you an idea of what we've been looking at since we started this particular forum. All right. So thank you again for joining us. And we're hoping and praying, as always, is that everything is well with you and your family and that everything is okay at your house. Here we are in the month of April, and we have been just going merrily along through the Gospel of John. That's right. Taking a deeper look at this gospel from this unique perspective of John, who writes unlike any of the other three gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Those three gospels together are called the synoptic gospels, and they really give a synopsis of Jesus's life. They are like brief biographies of his life. But John doesn't start where they start. John starts off in the beginning, and he actually covers territory that the other three gospels doesn't carry. And because of John's gospel alone, we know that Jesus's ministry lasted more than 1 year, that it lasted 3 years because he has Jesus going to the temple several times for a Passover celebration, which was only once a year. And so there's some unique things about John, and we're going to take a deeper look at that right at this moment. So here we go. We're going to take this dive into the Gospel of John. And I know last week I asked the question, and upon further reflection, maybe my question was not as clear as I would have liked it to be. And so as a result, I was going to try to come on today with an attempt at clarifying, if you would, some of the what folk may have misconstrued because I just wasn't as clear as I would like to be. Okay. Now, here's the question that we posed last week, and we got a mixed bag of answers. So I figured, gee, you know what I need to do? I need to go back and make sure that everybody's on the same footing with this. Okay. And the question was, how many miracles of Jesus are in all four gospels? Now, some people interpreted that as adding up all the miracles of Jesus and then giving me a sum total. But really what I meant to ask was, which are the only miracles of Jesus recorded in all four gospels? So what I'm asking you is, what miracle did Jesus perform that are recorded in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Which particular miracles do all of the writers have in common? Okay, that's a different question. And I apologize if I didn't word it well. And apologize even now if you're scratching your head saying, what is he talking about? Okay, so we really want to know between Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, those four gospels, how many miracles do all of them record of Jesus, the same miracle? How many of them record the same miracle? Okay, now I'll give you a hint. The Gospel of John only records 7 miracles. Okay, all right. And let me give you by process of elimination. The wedding at Cana, Galilee is only mentioned in John's Gospel. Okay, the healing of the blind man is only in John's Gospel. The raising of Lazarus from the dead is only in John's Gospel. So already you can see that the most it could be is 4. And when you start eliminating some of the others, okay? So if you got an answer, we kind of threw it out last week. Let's see how much good recall you have on this week, okay? So which are the only miracles of Jesus recorded in all 4 Gospels? That means that this miracle has to be in Matthew, it has to be in Mark, it has to be in Luke, and it also has to be in John. So we're not asking how many miracles he did. We don't know which miracles of Jesus all 4 of the writers recorded. Okay, so how are we doing? All right, so I'll give you a moment to think about that one. And let me see, some responses should be coming in momentarily. Okay, all right, great. All right, so in case you didn't get it last week, and I want to spend a lot of time on it, just wanted to clarify it in case somebody walked away thinking, wow, what is he talking about? Okay, that the answer is 1. There's only 1 miracle of Jesus that is recorded in Matthew, also recorded in Mark, also recorded in Luke, and also recorded in John. There's only 1, okay? And Vera Holmes, you got it right. The 2 fish and the 5 loaves feeding the 5,000. And here's where it is located, okay? So just so you know, we're not saying that Jesus didn't do miracles, that he didn't do a lot of them, which he did. It's just that there's only 1 miracle that spans across the 4 Gospels and is recorded by everyone. And of course, all of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, also record Jesus's resurrection. Okay? All right. So here's our question to start off for the day, our opening question. Growing up, what was one of your greatest childhood fears? Growing up, what was one of your greatest childhood fears? Okay, well, let me tell you one of my greatest fears. We were on the way to school. We had to pass through this yard. The front of it was a church, but the back of it seemed to be somebody's residence. And they had a vase in the window. And everybody, all the little kids, when we went by, we thought it was a ghost in the window. It just looked eerie. It looked weird. And to complicate all of that, bad enough that it was a church in the front, there's a residence in the back. We went past it in the back, and they had this vase that looked like a eerie man, right? Then they had a dog in the yard, okay? And that dog, every time we went by, the dog would run up to the gate and start yelping and, snarling, okay? And I'll tell you what happened to me one time. Unbeknownst to me, somebody on the property left the gate open. So I was kind of afraid of dogs, but not afraid if they were on the other side of the fence. So I'm walking by the fence, the dog is growling and he comes out the gate and jumps me. And I'm rolling down on the ground. I don't know if the dog was playing with me or not, but I was terrified, man. I was scared to death. And now to this day, decades later, a dog is not my best friend. I'm terrified of dogs. Don't tell nobody, but I get around dogs. I try to put on my best face. I try to act like I'm in command, but deep down is that little boy who got jumped by the dog, and man, was I scared for my life. Okay, anybody else? Okay, Dr. Tyler says she's scared of roller coasters. Childhood fear of roller coaster and dogs. Okay. Anybody else? Elizabeth Jackson, swimming. Okay, I can hear that. Here's one. Snakes. Now, my stepdad was so afraid of snakes that he was afraid of snakes in books. So we had the Encyclopedia Britannica. When we get to the section on snakes, there are no pictures. He cut all the snakes out of the encyclopedia. He was not afraid of just the real ones. He was afraid of the pictures of snakes. Okay. Now somebody, Vera says, was seen to be a haunted house on Clinton and Kennedy Boulevard. All right. Dolores Alexander, good to hear from you. Frogs. Yeah, we had to cut them up in biology. I never liked that. Okay. Anybody else? A childhood fear? Okay. So we're going to be talking about this. Now, before I go deeper into this, John chapter 6, verses 16 and following. When have you been stranded by a storm or a natural disaster? Have you ever been stranded by a storm or natural disaster? Maybe you were somewhere trying to get on a flight but couldn't get out, or maybe you were trying to get in or whatever. You were just snowstorms. I remember Superstorm Sandy. It kind of sidelined everybody. I've been delayed in airports, for flights, but have you ever been stranded by a storm or a natural disaster? What's that like? Okay. Oh, we got Eartha Jackson says she's afraid of spiders. Don't worry, you're not alone. Okay. When have you been stranded by a storm or a natural disaster? Superstorm Sandy. Yeah. I think a lot of us were. Yeah. Okay. Superstorm Sandy just got out of the airport. Oh, wow. Isn't that something? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Now, if you want to comment, feel free. We'll put it on the screen. We're just really grateful that you're with us. That's why we put your comments up. Let you know that we're glad that you can interact with us during this time. Okay. So here we go. Okay. Did you know that the Sea of Galilee is 700 feet below the Mediterranean Sea? Okay, people wonder why when the disciples would be on the sea sometimes, the sea be so calm. And I showed y'all pictures of when Brenda and I were in Israel in December 2018, and everything was so calm and peaceful. But they talk about how in a moment second, the wind can whip up a squall, a storm comes out, and it's violent. Well, some of it is that it's so far below the sea level, okay, that all these currents come across it and whips it up, and it becomes furious. It becomes deadly struggle just to stay alive on the Sea of Galilee. Thank God that when Brenda and we were on the sea, it was one of those calm, placid afternoons, and we got to sing the songs of Zion. But I did have in the back of my mind that this is the same place where the storm rose up. You better believe that. Okay. All right. So, so Vera says that she didn't have any experience with that. with the being stranded by a storm or in a disaster. Okay, so John chapter 6, verse 16 to 24. We're going to read that, okay? Jesus walks on the water. So here it is, okay? When evening came, his disciples went down to the lake where they got into a boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum. By now it was dark and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing and the waters grew rough. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water, and they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I. Don't be afraid." Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite shore of the lake realized that only one boat had been there, and that Jesus had not entered it with his disciples, but that they had gone away alone. Then some boats from Tiberias landed near the place where the people had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. Okay? Now, first question for us today is, why does Jesus send his disciples away? Why does he send his disciples away? Okay? Now, you're going to find out some interesting things about this passage when we take a deeper look at it. And what we're going to do today to help us look at it, we're going to discover a new biblical tool, a Bible study tool. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you a link that you can use to, help you study the Bible better. Now, it's a free tool. You don't have to pay for it. It's online, okay? If you got access to the internet, this is online and it's available for you for free. But the question is, why did Jesus send them away? Okay? Now, we don't get it from John as much as we get it from Matthew and Mark, but Jesus compels his disciples to get into a boat. In fact, that's real timid language. He demands them. He makes them get into a boat and go away. And the question for us is, why would he do that? Well, some of what's going on in John chapter 6, verses 16 to 24 is that the people have been searching for Jesus in order to make him a king. His time has not yet come. He does not want to be made king, okay? And he does not want his disciples to get caught up into this fervor, this messianic fervor, so he sends them on ahead of him. And we're going to see that in just a minute, okay? All right, so he sends them away so that they're not caught up in the crowd, because the crowd wants to make him king so that he can fight Rome and he can feed them. Okay? All right. Now, this tool that I want to show you about is called a harmony of the Gospels. And if you follow this link, let me expand it here. You can follow the link. Let me see. I'll just put it here in the comments. Okay. All right. So that you can go to it. It's real easy. BlueLetterBible.org/study/index.cfm. Okay. All right. So there it is. Okay. Now, if you follow that link, it would take you to something that's called the harmony of the Gospels. And what does that do for us? That puts all of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, side by side. Okay, so now you can be able to see just by looking at the different scripture passages which scriptures are germane to Matthew and may not be in Luke, Mark, Luke, or John, or which ones are in John but are not in the others. And you find a story, and you can find out where the parallel passage is in the other gospels. Okay, this really helped me a whole lot, especially when talking about the miracles of Jesus. So all I had to do was go down and find all the miracles and then go across and see which ones were recorded in Matthew, which in Mark, which were in Luke, and which were in John. And just by the process of elimination, you find that only one of them was in all four of the Gospels. You follow? Does that make sense to you? Okay, so it's there in the notes, and it's helpful. Okay, so what we're gonna do? We're gonna read the same story 2 more times. Okay, and then we're gonna talk about it. Okay, second time we're gonna read the same story that was in John chapter 6, verses 16 to 24. Now we're going to read it from Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. Listen to this. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up to a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Okay, that's from Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 33. Now let's look at Mark chapter 6, verse 45 to 52. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass them by, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. All right. Hey, there it is. The 3 countries. Now, interestingly, Luke doesn't record this. And we find out when Matthew records it, he talks about Peter walking on the water. Neither Mark nor John record Peter walking on the water. Does it mean that Peter didn't walk on the water? No, it does not. It means that they have different things that they look at. Okay? So they look at this, and here we see, talked last week about Galilee, okay? And here it is. Let me give you another look at Galilee, the sea. Now, Sea of Galilee is about 8 miles long. And so when disciples are rowing on the boat, they're about 4 miles in. So they're kind of like midway, you know, they're going from one side to the other, trying to go from one side to the other. Remember, they went from Gennesaret to this barren region where Jesus fed the 5,000. They went from the west side to the east side. Now, Jesus puts them back in the boat and tells them to go back to where they came from. Okay? And this is an amazing piece for me because the disciples are doing exactly what Jesus told them to do. Okay? So here it is. You see the map? You see Gennesaret on the left where it says populated side. That's the side where Tiberias, the city, was. Capernaum is north of there. Bethsaida is where Philip is from. And the other side where it's empty, they call it the desolate side, or the Decapolis, the 10 cities. This barren area is where he feeds the 5,000 people. Okay? And so what happens is Jesus puts his disciples in the boat off where he fed the 5,000, tell them to go back across the Sea of Galilee, back to Gennesaret. Okay? And they are going across this lake, or the Sea of Tiberias, or the Lake of Gennesaret, or the Sea of Galilee, and everything breaks loose. Okay? While they're doing that. Okay? Just want you to see. There's Brenda and I again. Oh, just some peaceful times on the Sea of Galilee. Okay? All right. Now, who in your family is good at keeping calm in the storms of life? Who in your family is good at keeping calm in the storms of life? You know, when stuff starts raging, when adversity comes, who in your family is good at keeping calm, keeping a level head? Who is it? Is it you? Is it one of your siblings? Is it your parent? Who is it in your family who is good at keeping calm in the storms of life? Because the reality is, and I don't want to be the person to really tell you something that you never heard before, but the reality of our existence as believers is that we face storms, okay? Elizabeth Jackson says, now it's her. Dolores Alexander says it's her, okay? Dr. Tyler says that was her mother, but now it's her. Eartha Jackson says it's her. All right, okay, so you guys are all of the rocks. You're the anchors. Okay, well, grateful to have you and your families. I'm sure your families benefit by having you calm in the middle of the storm. Janae says that she is, okay? All right. Well, good to know that. I know who to lean on when the storms of life come, because they are inevitable, okay? Now, not only that, here's another question. What do you do when storms come up in your life? What do you do when the storms come up in your life? Think about it for a minute. They're coming, right? And the thing about the storms in life, if you haven't experienced them yet, the old folk used to say, just keep living. Because it's about trouble. It's going to find us. Okay? Vera Holmes says she's the anchor. She's the calm one. Thank you. Okay? So What do you do when the storms come up in your life? Okay? What do you do? How do you handle? All right? Dr. Tyler says pray continually. Okay? Pray and let God. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? What do you do when the storms come? Okay. I'm waiting for you. I'm giving you a chance. All right. All right. Anybody else? Okay. So thank you so much for your input on that one. Now, here's the issue. Jesus has commanded his disciples to get in the boat. He does it to protect them. But understand this. Even though he does this to protect them, they still face the storm. They don't have a divine immunity. They're not in a situation where they can claim that, well, Jesus told me to get in the boat, therefore peace be still. Doesn't work like that. God may call you to something and you may still face a storm. You may still face adversity. You may still face the trials and the tribulations of this life, okay? So just because God calls you to it does not mean that you're going to have some sort of divine immunity where you're not going to get hurt, where it's not going to cause you any pain because the Lord told you to do it. Lord told his disciples to get on the boat. He tells them to protect them, but guess what happens? They run into a storm. Now, this is the amazing thing about the storm that they run into. Are you ready for this? Jesus engineers the storm. Okay? He puts them into place where they can face the storm. He puts them into place where they will face adversity. And we're like, hold on, Jesus. You told them to do it. They do what you say, and they face a storm. And Jesus would say, yes, that is correct. I put them in the boat. I told them to get on the water. And when he did that, if you go back into John's gospel and look at it, it was evening. Now, one of the writers declares it's the fourth watch in the morning. So it's like 3 o'clock, between 3 and 6 a.m. What have they been doing? They've been trying to get over this lake that isn't even 8 miles long. They've been trying to get from one end to the other, and they've been rowing all night long. Every time they row forward, the wind pushes them back. They can't seem to get to their destination. These are not city dwellers. These are fishermen. The storm is against them. In fact, Bible says that Jesus has such a great vantage point. He goes up into a mountain to pray and he watches them struggle. Okay, we read the 3 accounts. Jesus watches his disciples struggle. And Mark says that he walks on the water and would have walked past them. He's like, basically, I told y'all I'm going to meet y'all on the other side. He goes to walking across the water to get to the other side, and he would have passed them, except his disciples see him and think he's a ghost, and they're screaming because they're terrified. We talk about being scared of dogs and spiders and roller coasters. Can you imagine being on a lake and you see somebody and you don't know what it is? It's the middle of the morning, night, and they walking. I mean, they don't have on snowshoes. They don't have on a surfboard. They're just literally walking with shoes on top of water. I mean, I think I would be, I'd be kind of aghast. I'd be kind of afraid myself. I'm kind of like, what in the world is this? You know? Okay. Okay. So check this out. Jesus does that. Okay. And what John tells us then in this story is that the disciples who are being obedient face a storm. It'll happen to you. It'll happen because a lot of times the storms come, and they come to make us stronger. And God knows that some of us are not going to get strong until we face adversity. And when that adversity comes, man, it comes and it's going to cause us to react. And it does the same thing with the disciples, okay? So here's what the Bible says, when evening came, they went down to the lake. They got into a boat, set off to go back to where they came from. But now it was dark, and Jesus had joined them. So it's evening. Could be 7, 8 o'clock, whatever, somewhere around there, okay? They're on the lake. The wind starts blowing. And they're about 3 or 4 miles. After they rode 3 or 4 miles, they're somewhere still in the lake. And now they're being overwhelmed by this storm. But they see Jesus, or they don't know who they see. And that's the amazing thing about it. They don't know who they see, but they think it's a ghost, okay? Now, see, I got a question for some of you. And the question is this: what would you do if you saw Jesus walking on a lake? What would you do if you saw Jesus walking on the lake? Okay? All right? You're somewhere, you're on the lake, maybe you're fishing, maybe you're out there looking at the stars. It's calm, it's placid, whatever. And you see Jesus on the lake. What do you do? What would you do if you saw Jesus walking on a lake? Would your reaction be similar to the disciples? Would you be fearful? Would you scream? Would you yell? I'm thinking about some of these horror genre movies, and some of these movies that, even though they're horror, some of them are just downright funny to me sometimes, because you see the boogeyman coming, you see the villain coming, and folk are there like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And I'm like, man, I would have been running. But I don't know what I'm gonna do if I'm in the middle of the lake. If I'm in the boat, do I start paddling with all my strength? I don't know. Dr. Tyler says, she says, I would be afraid. Sure, I would too. I'd be serious afraid. Faint, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Elizabeth Jackson, thank you for that. I definitely would be kind of, a little upset, right? Okay, so so kind of like we would have a reaction, right? Okay. Now, here's the point Jesus makes. He comes, there's a storm, they're afraid. Okay? Matthew alone tells us that all the disciples ask, is it you, Lord? Because they want to know, is it you? Who is that? What are you? Whatever. And Jesus uses this phrase that we don't see over and over again in the Gospel of John. He says, it is I. Ego eimi. I am. That's what he says in the Greek. He says, it is I. I am. Those are the 7 sayings that Jesus will say in the Gospel of John. They call them the 7 I ams. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the true vine. I am the good shepherd. I am. And so he says to the disciples, when they ask who he is, he uses a phrase that God used with Moses. When God told Moses, I am. And in John chapter 8, we're going to see it coming up. when they asked Jesus about who he is, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. I am. So they want to know, is it you? Jesus says, I am. Okay. So it's not just like yes, but it's like I'm asserting my divinity, my deity. I'm asserting my control over nature. Okay. Now, one of the things about this miracle, Jesus had just finished feeding 5,000 people. And here's the question I have for you. What did the disciples fail to see in the feeding of the 5,000 that could have helped them here? Okay. Now, John doesn't mention it, but Mark makes a point of it. Okay. Makes a point in mentioning that the disciples in Mark chapter 6, verse 52, it said, for they had not understood about the loaves. You remember the loaves? Remember the 2 fish and the 5 loaves? Remember that there were 5,000 men beside women and children. They made them sit down, they fed them, and they collected. Every disciple had a receptacle full of leftovers, of remains. Okay? There was more garbage, there was more leftover than there was to start with. And they would have put those leftovers in the boat with them. Okay, so here you are, you got these receptacles, you got this stuff that has been left over, you put it in the boat with you, and now the boat is being tossed. And so what did they not get? Elizabeth Jackson says that Jesus will supply all of your needs. Right. They had a reminder right there in front of them that Jesus is the one who has just fed 5,000 men. Not only did he do it, but we got the evidence right on board with us. But as Mark says in Mark chapter 6, verse 52, they did not understand the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. Their heads were thick. They weren't open to understanding who he was. So even though he was God over creation, the disciples can't see this. They got evidence with them, but they cannot see, as Sister Perry says, the power of Jesus. Okay, he has the power. Okay, now I want to show you something that John shows us that the other gospels don't even hint at. Okay, now John makes a point in his gospel of highlighting for us another miracle that has happened. And a lot of times we don't think about this miracle because it kind of like happened below the radar. Okay, and here it is. Okay, let me see. Verse number, let me put this up on the screen for you and talk about it. Verse number 21. I want you to see this. Let me make it bigger. Okay, it says, this is John's gospel. A strong wind was blowing, verse 18, and the waters grew rough. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water. They were frightened, right? But he said to them, it is I, or I am. Don't be afraid. Then, listen to this. Listen to this. Then they were willing to take him into the boat. And almost parenthetically, as if John doesn't even give us time to breathe. And immediately the boat reached the shore where they were headed. Did you get that? Did you understand that? That here's a miracle that really kind of goes under the radar, because they in the middle of the water, the storm is raging, they think it's a ghost. When they realize it's Jesus, maybe after he pulls Peter out of the water, he gets in the boat. John says, immediately the boat was at shore. They didn't have to row. They didn't have to steer. They didn't have to get a nice wind. Immediately, the boat they were in was on the shore. Wow. That's a miracle. Okay. Those are the kind of miracles that Jesus do to go unstated. You know, one time when the crowd wanted to throw Jesus off a cliff, the Bible said he simply passed through their midst. Now, can you imagine a crowd of people? Maybe they form circles around you or whatever, and they want to kill you. How do you pass through their midst? Supernaturally. He has the ability to just walk through the crowd. Here he demonstrates his disciples that he can take a boat that's faltering. He can take disciples who have been rowing against the wind, who can go nowhere. And when he gets in the boat, immediately, instantaneously, that boat is now landed on shore. Now, I'm going to tell you something. You think that is impressive? I'm going to tell you what. The disciples thought it was impressive. Okay? Let me show you this. In the Gospel of Matthew, that when he did this, Matthew chapter, let me see, Matthew chapter 14, look what happened. When Jesus gets into the boat, let me share this with you. Verse 32, and when they climbed into the boat, that would be Peter and Jesus, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. Now, I want you to get this. Jesus had just fed 5,000 people with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread, but it did not elicit that kind of response from the disciples. It did not cause them to say, this is God. Okay? But when he walked on the water, for them, that was the most miraculous demonstration of his power. Okay? He heals the nobleman's son. He raises people from the dead. But it is his walking on the water that causes these disciples to worship him and bow and call him and say, truly, you are the Son of God. There's something about this miracle that is more compelling than all the other miracles of Jesus in the eyes of his disciples. I want you to think for a moment, why do you think this miracle is so compelling to his disciples? Okay. All right. Jesus gets them to their destination. That's good. He will get you to your destination. He told you to go. He's going to get you there. All right. Why do you think this miracle, as opposed to any of the other miracles of Jesus, is so compelling to the disciples? I mean, they saw him unstop deaf ears. They saw him open blinded eyes. But this miracle caused them to say, truly, you are the Son of God. Anybody? Okay. Why do you think this miracle? All right. So we I got about a minute or 2 left before we go. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Alexander, because they were afraid. That's amazing. That is fear. Fear's of some kind of power, isn't it? Because it was done for them. Okay. Even though the feeding the 5,000, it said the disciples ate too. That's a good point, though. That is a good point. Okay. My musings on it, I don't know. We'd have to get the glory and ask the disciples why this miracle more than others caused them to really bow and really revere Jesus. I think what Dolores Alexander gets to is this. It's something when your life is on the line. It's something when you feel like you're going to die. I think it's something when you know that somebody has just done something that is you've never experienced. You know, I mean, they are standing on water. I mean, you've been fighting 7 hours, 8 hours against the water, in the rain, in the wind, and this man is now standing outside the boat on the water. Wow, isn't that something? That's powerful. So I think that the disciples look at that and say, "Wow, it's not opening the deaf ears, it's not opening blinded eyes, it's not healing the man who's at the pool for 38 years. It's not any of those other miracles, but it is his ability to command nature and walk on water. And maybe it's also that immediately the boat got to dry land. I mean, warp speed, it's like we've never seen any, no doubt about it. This is indeed the Son of God. Okay, so that for me is an amazing thing to think about. Whatever you're going through today, whatever you are facing in your life, and I just want to ask you this before we go: what stress do you have that you need Jesus to calm? And I know you might be saying, "Well, Reverend, I'm not stressful. I'm not going through anything." But whatever it is, the good thing about it is you don't have to tell me, but God already knows. And he can calm your sea just like he did the Sea of Galilee. He can meet you wherever you happen to be. So we're going to pray that God will calm whatever it is. Maybe it's the fear of uncertainty. Maybe, you're about to be evicted. Maybe it's about a financial issue. Maybe you're concerned about your children. Maybe it's your grandchildren. Maybe it's your own health. I don't know what it is, but there are things that come in our life and they unsettle us. But I know Jesus has the power. So we're going to ask you for prayer requests. If you have any, just drop them in the comment field and we'll be sure to lift them up as we get ready to go to God in prayer. Shall we pray? Lord, thank you because you're the one who calmed the Sea of Galilee. And the storms just keep raging in our lives. And we ask you for right now your peace. Some of us have storms that are financial. Some of our storms are physical. Some of our storms are emotional. Some of our storms are relational. And for some of us, our storms are of our own creation. But whatever the storm is, you can speak peace to the storm. You can speak peace to that which rages on the inside of each and every one of us. So I'm asking God for your peace, for your reassurance, that you would meet each of us right now, wherever we happen to be, whatever we're going through. Touch us now. I pray for our young people, for our children, for our babies, the ones who are in school. Pray, Lord, that they could recover this year, where some of them have just been missing in action. I pray for those who have been sick. I mean, physically sick, who have been suffering with COVID. And Lord, we know that COVID-19 is not the only illness in our world. There's cancer, there's lung disease, there's heart disease. There are so many other things that we suffer from. But just the way we need you as a healer for COVID, we need you to be a healer in all these other situations. I pray for that family that's been struggling to keep things together, for that single mom who's been struggling to keep her children together, keep food on the table, for that person, God, who has to go out to work every single day. I pray for Vera Holmes' daughter, Sharon. I just pray, God, that you meet her wherever she is. I pray for her children, for her family. Keep them strong. I pray for Vera's sister, Dawn. Pray for her entire family. Lord, I thank you for Vera, who's been really through some storms, been holding up her children, been raising her grandchildren. And I know this pandemic has been really tough. Would you please touch her mind, touch her body, bring her healing. And not only her, but so many who are on this Bible study now who have desperate, dire needs. Some of our requests are so personal and deep that we don't even want to raise them in front of people. But Lord, I pray, Lord, that you would meet those needs, that you would supply what we need according to your riches and glory. Now, God, go with us and stand by us. For those who have to go back to work, please give them a productive day as they go do what they have been assigned and tasked to do. For those who are at home and working, those moms who staying at home, and those people who are working from home, Lord, reinvigorate them, energize them is my prayer. Keep us all as the apple of your eye. And ask all of this in the mighty name of Jesus. Before I go, I want to just encourage you and invite you that we are going to be having a church-wide meeting on next Tuesday evening. Church-wide meeting is open for you. All you have to do is go online to newforhopejc.com/register. We need you to show up. Reason why is because you help to keep me and this church leadership accountable. We don't want to do anything unless we touch bases with you. So it's your turn to hold the ministry accountable, hold the pastor accountable, the deacons, the trustees. So if you have something you want to share as we look at reopening, we need to hear from you. Where do we go from here? Next Tuesday evening, 7 o'clock, www.newforhopejc.com/register. I hope you register today, and I'm sure looking forward to seeing you then. May God bless you. May heaven smile upon you, and may God grant you his